On this episode of the program, we bring you highlights from the Fourth Circle Universal Periodic Review of Nigeria before the United Nations Human Rights Council, sitting in Geneva, Switzerland on Tuesday, January the 23rd. The Nigerian delegation was led by the Attorney General of the Federation and Minister of Justice, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Lateef Fagbemi, the Solicitor General of the Federation and Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Justice, Beatrice Jedi Agba, and the former Attorney General of Ekiti State, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Olawale Faponda. Also showing on the program, Ogun State gets new judges. We also have the weekly recap of the top legal stories in the news. Hello and welcome to the program. I am Shola Shieli. On Tuesday, January 23, 2023, Nigeria defended its human rights record before the United Nations Human Rights Council, sitting in Geneva, Switzerland.
Established in 2006 by the General Assembly, the UN Human Rights Council is the main intergovernmental body within the United Nations responsible for strengthening the promotion and protection of human rights around the globe. The Council, comprised of 47 member states, provides a multilateral forum to address human rights violations and country situations. It also responds to human rights emergencies and makes recommendations on how to better implement prevailing human rights issues. Ahead of Nigeria's defense, some member states had tabled some complaints against the country. They include concerns about the conduct of security agencies, not only in dealing with crimes, but the insurgency in some parts of northern Nigeria, the status of women in Nigeria, especially as it relates to women in elective and appointive positions, the independence of anti-corruption agencies, challenges with criminal justice reform, including prison congestion, and the large number of persons awaiting trial, elections and the prosecution of electoral offenders, as well as the ability of the government to implement recommendations of local and international human rights investigative bodies. All this and more were addressed by the Attorney General of the Federation, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Lateef Fagbemi, who led a team of subject matter experts to the defense. The AGF and members of his team took their time to respond to these human rights issues. Here are some of the highlights from the session.
Nigeria reiterates its support for the Universal Periodic Review as an important mechanism of the United Nations Human Rights Council, integral to the promotion and protection of human rights. Nigeria is committed to our obligations under the human rights. We have taken steps to domesticate these instruments in our national legislations, including the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria and human rights treaties ratified by our country. Our delegation is pleased that our national report for the Fourth Cycle Review has generated a lot of interest and elicited a number of advanced questions and comments from the delegations from Belgium, Germany, Liechtenstein, Slovenia, Sweden, United Kingdom, United States of America, and Portugal. We wish to respond to the advanced questions in thematic cluster as follows: death penalty and moratorium. On the status of death penalty and moratorium, similar recommendations were made during the third cycle. We have elaborated on new positive developments in this area in paragraphs 302 to 306 of the national report. We state further that Section 12(2)(c) of the Nigerian Correctional Service Act 2019 provides for the transmutation of death sentence to life imprisonment for cases that have exhausted all legal remedies where the sentence has not been executed after 10 years. No execution has been carried out since the third cycle, which implies that a voluntary moratorium may be in place. With regards to the adherence to the optional protocol to the ICCPR, we state that Nigeria has not signed or ratified this protocol and has not supported recommendations on the abolition of death sentence. Protection of rights and vulnerable groups, including older persons and children. Inquiries have been made from us on measures in place to combat ageism in all its forms and to protect the human rights of older persons. we reiterate our commitment to the protection of rights of vulnerable persons and groups without discrimination. We add further that Nigeria has taken deliberate steps to elevate the protection of older persons as a human rights issue, especially in the establishment of the National Senior Citizen Center. The NSCC provides social services for the elderly and improves their quality of living through community-based prototype system, community safe spaces, and daycare centers, among others. The National Senior Citizen Center Act 2017 was enacted to address the needs of older persons, and Nigeria's development plan includes a national policy on aging 2020 and a strategic roadmap on aging 2022-2032, which all address the concerns of older persons in Nigeria. Efforts are also ongoing to enact a law on the rights of older persons. On children, girls, and women, questions have been asked about our financial commitment to implementing Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act 2015. We are pleased to report that Nigeria has continued to increase human and operational resources to national agencies for the prohibition of trafficking in persons, otherwise known as NATIP, and other mechanisms established to respond to VAPP across the nation. On the steps taken by Nigeria to ratify the optional protocol to the Convention on the Right of the Child on Communications Procedure, Nigeria values the protection and promotion of the rights of the child, having domesticated the Convention on the Right of the Child, CRC, through the Child Rights Act since 2003, and also ratified 2 protocols to the CRC. As at December 2023, all the 36 states in Nigeria have passed the child rights law. We have created sufficient mechanisms at the national and subnational levels to further promote these rights.
The AGF also addressed questions from Germany, Belgium, and the United States of America on issues of same-sex relationships. He provided clarifications on questions asked by Sweden and the UK on the protection of rights to freedom of association, peaceful assembly, and press freedom, and also answered questions from Germany regarding the independence of anti-corruption agencies.
On the question regarding the independence of anti-corruption agencies, we state that all the anti-corruption agencies in Nigeria are made independent by the legal instruments establishing them. We further refer to paragraphs 267 to 278 of the National Report on our achievements and progress on anti-corruption campaigns and strengthening of our legal institutional frameworks, sexual orientation, and gender identity. With regard to the questions on the issues of same-sex relationships, we state our initial rejection of recommendations relating to same-sex relationships during the previous cycle review as they are inconsistent with our domestic laws. The position of Nigeria is dictated by societal norms and values. It is important to emphasize that the process of lawmaking in Nigeria is participatory and inclusive. Accordingly, therefore, our laws are a reflection of the sentiment of the Nigerian people. Rights to freedom of association, peaceful assembly, and media, and respect for rule of law. Mr. President, on the protection of rights to freedom of association, peaceful assembly, and press freedom, we reaffirm Nigeria's commitment to freedom of association, peaceful assembly, and press freedom as enshrined in the Constitution of Nigeria. It is important for me to reiterate that the government of Nigeria is committed to the rule of law and respect for court decisions. Court decisions in Nigeria are binding on all persons and authorities until they are set aside by a superior court.
There was also a question by the UK on gender equality. Here's what the AGF had to say.
Gender equality and productive health issues and protection of women against discrimination and other violence. On the issue of implementation of our national gender policy of 35% representation of women in elected and appointed posts, Nigeria has taken steps to improve the number of women in both elective and appointive positions. Paragraphs 82 to 83 and 89 to 91 of the national report address these issues.
The AGF also addressed questions on abuse of human rights by security agencies and the protection of civilians.
On the issue of the conduct of the Nigerian security forces in dealing with persons who come in conflict with the law, including its prosecution of counter-terrorism activities, the government of Nigeria has adopted a zero-tolerance policy for all forms of torture or inhuman and degrading treatments. Specifically, Nigeria affirms the important place of human rights in dealing with security challenges. To achieve these in concrete terms, Nigeria has passed the Anti-Torture Act 2017. Nigeria has also designated the National Human Rights Commission as an independent national prevention mechanism under the OPCAT. The Committee Against Torture in Nigeria has been strengthened with an essential mandate to prevent all forms of torture in Nigeria.
On the electoral process and punishment of offenders, here's what the AGF said.
We affirm our commitment to democratic process, crucial to which is the constant review of our electoral system and processes. It is for this reason that Nigeria has adopted an open-door policy with respect to international monitoring of its elections. We, therefore, welcome our partnership with the international monitoring bodies and remain committed to working with them to improve our electoral process in order to address any identified challenges or lapses.
After this, recommendations came from Sri Lanka, Palestine, Sweden, Thailand, Angola, and many other member states.
The UK acknowledges Nigeria's progress on human rights since its last review and welcomes Nigeria's commitment to investigating allegations of human rights violations by security forces, which should be conducted robustly and transparently and ensure perpetrators are held to account. We recommend that Nigeria, 1, protect civilians and ensure all violations of international humanitarian law and/or human rights violations or abuses are fully investigated, ensuring accountability when civilians are unlawfully killed. 2, ensure that the human rights of those accused of blasphemy are protected and ensure accountability for related mob killings. And 3, enact further legislation to strengthen the rights of women, including the 5 bills it is committed to reintroducing and increase women's political participation and promote gender equality.
The United States welcomes the delegation from Nigeria and commends them for registering the first labor union for informal workers and for its continued efforts to combat human trafficking. We remain concerned regarding certain restrictions on the enjoyment of Nigerians' human rights. In the spirit of constructive engagement, we recommend that Nigeria, 1, implement recommendations from state-level investigative panel reports into the security forces' response to the End SARS protests, including the prosecution, as appropriate, of individuals credibly implicated in these reports. 2, amend the Nigerian Press Council Act of 1990 to remove undue restrictions on freedom of expression, specifically as they apply to online and citizen journalists. 3, end the arbitrary arrest and detention of LGBTQI+ persons. And 4, amend law enforcement standard operating procedures to ensure they respect and protect the human rights and fundamental freedoms of all Nigerians. I thank.
Nigeria responded to the suggested recommendations.
Our government recognizes that achieving sustainable reforms in our justice system is not only matters of law, justice, and human rights, but also that of economic growth and development. To achieve this in concrete terms, Mr. President, we have identified key institutions, including the judiciary, the Nigerian police, and the correctional services that are subject of our reform intervention. The Chief Justice of Nigeria has commenced a comprehensive review of working conditions, salaries, and allowances of judicial officers nationwide. It is his firm belief that achieving judicial reform must commence with an improvement in the situation of our judicial officers. Other areas of interest relate to the manner of appointment of judicial officers and ensuring that our justice processes are fast and effective. Concerning the Nigerian police, One of the lessons we took away from the recent protests against police abuse nationwide, otherwise called NSAS, is the unacceptable level of unhappiness about the way police complaints are handled, especially when the perpetrators are police officers. It is for this reason that the government of Nigeria is now compiling the reports of the various investigative committees into the said protests with a view to ensuring that all the concerns are appropriately dealt with. One of the proposals government is considering is the appointment of an independent police ombudsman to investigate and report on complaints of police abuse with a view to achieving speedy justice for victims.
On the issue of early and forced marriage, Nigeria has enacted laws and policies aimed at addressing child early and forced marriage. The child rights laws, which have been passed by all 36 states of the Federation, places a minimum of 18 years for marriage for both boys and girls. Nigeria also has a national strategy to end child marriage, which has the vision of ending child marriage by the year 2030. In recognition of the plural nature of our legal system and the effect of religion and cultural practice on this issue, we have continued to engage with NGOs in order to conduct awareness campaigns to educate communities about the negative consequences of early marriage.
The session lasted over 3 hours, and at the end, the AGF again reiterated Nigeria's commitment to giving effect to the recommendations made in line with the social and cultural and religious values of the country.
Back here in Nigeria, 3 new judges of the State High Court and Customary Court of Appeal have been sworn in by Governor Dapo Abiodun towards strengthening the judicial sector and quick dispensation of justice. At a ceremony held in Abeokuta, the state capital, the governor charged the new judges to always uphold the fundamental principle of the rule of law, shun temptations and trials.
To be able to effectively dispense justice, you must not only rise above temptations and trials, but also be calculative, honest, objective, and dispassionate in all ramifications. I'm therefore confident that with today's swearing in of these new judges in the High Court and the Customary Court of Appeal, the tradition of integrity, diligence, industry, and excellence that have been the hallmark of our state judiciary will not only be continued, but will also be enhanced. To the distinguished appointees, your appointment represents a cornerstone of our justice system. Your wisdom, fairness, and unwavering commitment to upholding the rule of law will undoubtedly contribute to the continued strength and impartiality of our judiciary. Permit me to note that law and order exist for the purpose of dispensing justice. And when they fail in this purpose, they become a dangerous structure that blocks the flow of social progress and economic development. Therefore, in taking this esteemed position, you accept the profound responsibility to uphold justice, preserve the customs of our people, and ensure that the principle of fairness and equity prevail in every ruling. Please, you must not forget the weight of the duties that lie ahead. The role of a judge in the High Court and Customary Court of Appeal is one that requires not only legal acumen, but also a deep appreciation of the traditions and customs that shape our society. Therefore, I urge you to remain steadfast in your commitment to serving our state with honor and with dedication. Your responsibilities carry great weight, and I trust that you will discharge them with utmost integrity and professionalism.
And just before we go, a quick recap of some of the top legal stories in the news.
We begin with the report that the Supreme Court has affirmed the election of Governors Ahmed Aliyu of Sokoto State, Siminalayi Fubara of Rivers State, and Kefas Agbu of Taraba State. It was a unanimous judgment for all the appeals as the Apex Court upheld the decision of the lower courts. The five-member panel headed by Justice Kudirat Kekereekun held that the appellants failed to prove their cases with sufficient evidence that the governors were not duly elected by a majority of votes cast during the March 18 governorship elections. First, the panel dismissed the appeal of Mr. Tonya Cole of the All Progressives Congress in Rivers State against the election of Governor Siminalayi Fubara. In dismissing the appeal, the five-member panel held that Mr. Cole did not prove his allegations of overvoting, non-compliance, as well as non-qualification of Governor Fubara to contest the election, and accordingly, the appeal was dismissed for lack of merit. In dismissing the appeal of Said Umar of the PDP against the victory of Governor Ahmed Aliyu of Sokoto, the Apex Court held that the appellants did not demonstrate that the two lower courts were perverse in their judgments and did not also show evidence of non-compliance with the Electoral Act. While affirming the victory of Governor Kefasagbo of Taraba State, the Apex Court held that the appellant's case, Professor Sani Yahaya of the NNPP, was incompetent on grounds of incomplete transmission of the record of proceedings. Outside the courtroom, the winning parties celebrated the victories. Staying at the Supreme Court, a five-man panel of the court has upheld the 5-year sentence of former House of Representatives member Farouk Lawan for receiving a bribe of $500,000 from businessman Femi Otedola. Lawan was tried for receiving $500,000 bribe during a legislative probe into the fuel subsidy regime in 2012. Lawan's appeal sought to set aside the February 24, 2022 judgment of the Court of Appeal in Abuja, which sentenced him to a 5-year jail term and discharged him on 2 out of the 3 counts on the corruption charge brought against him by the federal government. At the Federal High Court, Abuja, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, has arraigned the immediate past governor of Anambra State, Mr. Willie Obiano. The former governor was arraigned before Justice Inyang Ekwo on a 9-count charge of alleged money laundering to the tune of 4 billion naira. Among other things, Mr. Obiano is accused of moving the amount from security votes into different accounts between March 2014 and March 2022. He has since pleaded not guilty and is currently on administrative bail granted by the EFCC. Counsel to the prosecution, Mr. Sylvanus Tahir, says he has 15 witnesses lined up to testify against the former governor. The case has been adjourned to between March the 3rd and the 7th for trial. A state high court sitting in Port Harcourt has struck out a suit filed by the Rivers Elders and Leaders Forum challenging the constitutionality of the President Bola Tinubu, who initiated a peace resolution between Governor Siminalayi Fubara, the Minister of the FCT Nyesom Wike, and others, asking the court to declare vacant the seats of the 24 defected members of the Rivers State Assembly from PDP to APC, amongst other prayers. The presiding judge, Justice Chinwendu Nwogu, struck out the case on the grounds that the State High Court lacked the jurisdiction to hear the matter. The Rivers Elders and Leaders Forum, led by former Governor Rufus Ada George, has been at the forefront of campaigning for peace in the state. They had condemned the peace resolutions reached by parties involved after President Tinubu intervened, insisting that the agreements reached were undemocratic and harmful to the state. And we round off with the report that the trial of the principal and some staff members of Christian School Okwebi has resumed at the Lagos High Court Ikeja, with the testimony of the parents of late Whitney Adeniran, a 12-year-old student of the school who died on February the 9th, 2023, during the school's inter-house sports activities held at the Agege Stadium. The father, Adeyemi Adeniran, who had begun his testimony in May 2023, answered questions under cross-examination from counsel to the school, Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Bolaji Ayorinde. Mr. Adeniran told the trial judge, Justice Onyidamola Ogala, that he was informed by the school nurse that his daughter died at the Agege Stadium before she was taken to the hospital. His wife, Blessing Adeniran, also told the court that she was not aware of the effects of the medication prescribed by the family hospital when her daughter previously fell sick before her untimely death. The state government had charged Christian School Okwebi, its principal, Belinda Amo, the vice principal, Kuku Fatai, the school nurse, Victoria Nwatu, and a cotton candy vendor at the stadium, Ademoye Adewale, for the death of the student. The defendants were arraigned on a 2-count charge bordering on alleged involuntary manslaughter, reckless and negligent manner that endangered the student's life. At their arraignment on March the 31st, 2023, the defendants all pleaded not guilty.
And this is where we adjourn proceedings for today. Do remember to check out the Channels TV website for a replay of this episode of the program, as well as past episodes. Please also send in any feedback via our social media handles. I am Shola Shayeli. Thank you for watching and see you next time.